Now, in about 2 minutes, we expect the President of the United States to walk into the briefing room over at the West Wing of the White House and make a statement to the nation. He has been briefed by the FBI director, by the Secretary of Homeland Security, by his White House Chief of Staff, his Homeland Security Advisor, Gloria Borger. As we await the President of the United States, you've been talking to your sources as well. What are you picking up? Well,
the first thing I picked up before this press conference we just had is that there was some confusion, as John King pointed out, about whether the fire at the Kennedy Library was at all related to the Copley Square incidents. And the answer to that is that it was a mechanical fire or an explosion that was completely unrelated. In these kind of situations, we tend to link things together that may not always be linked together. And I would also like to report that the fire is in the new wing of the library, did not affect any of the Kennedy archives. As for the president speaking in a few minutes, to me, I think it's important that the president actually go on the air and speak to the American people. We've just had this been told, as Tom is saying, that this is a terrorist incident, whether domestic or foreign, and the president needs to speak to the American people.
And we're told he's only a minute or so away. Jessica Yellen is over there watching what's going on. We have any indication, Jessica, what the president is going to say?
Well, they haven't told us exactly what he'll say, but I'm sure he will reassure the American people that officials here in Washington are in ongoing contact with officials there on the ground, as they have told us consistently since the president was first briefed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I would remind you that this White House took quite a lashing after they failed to call another incident terrorism when a number of Americans were killed in attacks then overseas. But so one would imagine the president will be careful to call this, I would guess, terrorism today. And if you do hear him say that, it could have a broad range of meanings. Politically, it's something that one might imagine he has to do. Also, he spoke today with Deval Patrick, the mayor as well of Boston, and Speaker Boehner. Speaker Boehner released a picture of that conversation as well. The speaker will hold a moment of silence later this evening for those who lost their lives in Boston. And I expect that the president will tell us a little bit more about the efforts he's undertaking now to solve this problem.
All right, sit down. Here comes the president.
Good afternoon, everybody. Earlier today, I was briefed by my Homeland Security team on the events in Boston. We're continuing to monitor and respond to the situation as it unfolds, and I've directed the full resources of the federal government to help state and local authorities protect our people, increase security around the United States as necessary, and investigate what happened. The American people will say a prayer for Boston tonight, and Michelle and I send our deepest thoughts and prayers to the families of the victims in the wake of this senseless loss. We don't yet have all the answers, but we do know that multiple people have been wounded, some gravely, in explosions at the Boston Marathon. I've spoken to FBI Director Mueller and Secretary of Homeland Security Napolitano, and they're mobilizing the appropriate resources to investigate and to respond. I've updated leaders of Congress in both parties, and we reaffirmed that on days like this there are no Republicans or Democrats. We are Americans united in concern for our fellow citizens. I've also spoken with Governor Patrick and Mayor Menino and made it clear that they have every single federal resource necessary to care for the victims and counsel the families. And above all, I made clear to them that all Americans stand with the people of Boston. Boston police, firefighters, and first responders, as well as the National Guard, responded heroically and continue to do so as we speak. It's a reminder that so many Americans serve and sacrifice on our behalf every single day, without regard to their own safety, in dangerous and difficult circumstances. And we salute all those who assisted in responding so quickly and professionally to this tragedy. We still do not know who did this or why, and people shouldn't jump to conclusions before we have all the facts. But make no mistake, we will get to the bottom of this, and we will find out who did this. We'll find out why they did this. Any responsible individuals, any responsible groups will feel the full weight of justice. Today is a holiday in Massachusetts, Patriots' Day. It's a day that celebrates the free and fiercely independent spirit that this great American city of Boston has reflected from the earliest days of our nation. And it's a day that draws the world to Boston's streets in a spirit of friendly competition. Boston is a tough and resilient town. So are its people. I'm supremely confident that Bostonians will pull together, take care of each other, and move forward as one proud city. And as they do, the American people will be with them every single step of the way. You should anticipate that as we get more information, our teams will provide you briefings. We're still in the investigation stage at this point, but I just want to reiterate, we will find out who did this, and we will hold them accountable. Thank you very much.
President making a brief statement, about 3 minutes or so. If you were monitoring what he had to say, the president vowing that the United States, that the U.S. will find out who did this and hold those individuals or individual fully responsible for what happened just about 3 hours or so ago. If you're just joining us, we're covering the breaking news out of Boston. Clearly a terror attack at the Boston Marathon. 2 explosions have killed at least 2 people. The Boston Globe reporting at least 90 people have been injured, some of them critically injured. Sources tell CNN a third apparent explosive device has been found. Experts are working to dismantle it. This at a different location. Boston police are urging everyone right now to keep off the streets, to stay at home or in their hotels. Cities including New York City, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles, they are increasing security right now out of an abundance of caution, according to local law enforcement. We have complete CNN team coverage of this terror attack on the Boston Marathon. We're watching all angles of what's going on right now. And these are some of the images that were captured of what's going on. Jessica Yellen was in the briefing room when the president spoke. Jessica, President did not say this is a terror attack, as we are saying now, based on what law enforcement, federal law enforcement, is telling us. But I assume the president is trying to be overly cautious before he declares this a terror attack.
I think that they're being very careful, and he has had experience with these kinds of situations after the attack in Libya and carefully avoiding using the word. The fact that he didn't mention it right now, Wolf, I think is meaningful, and perhaps they have some more information than we do. He's being considered, I think, and there must be a reason he chose not to use that word. He clearly is determined, and one of the messages that they consistently send out, after the death of bin Laden was the killing of bin Laden was a message to the world that when we say we will make people who attack America or cause death in America pay, we mean it. And when he stood here today and said we will find out who did this and they will pay consequences, he clearly had intent and he meant it. So that doesn't mean that somebody will pay the same price, but he was quite sincere and quite firm in that, and at the same time was quite careful not to use the word terrorism. So I think we should all heed what he said and take interest in that. I'll try to find out why they were being so careful here in avoiding calling it terrorism.
Yeah, the president is very precise in his words. That's a very sensitive issue, declaring it a terror attack, and it has real ramifications as far as the federal government is concerned. So go ahead, Jessica, check with your sources. Fran Townsend, your sources, your law enforcement sources, have told you that the federal government now does believe this was, in fact, a terror event.
That's right, Wolf. And it may be, let's remember, the memory of 9/11, September 11th, is not so far away. And when Americans hear a terror attack, there's implicit in that, in many respects, that it's a foreign-driven event. And I think what we know from law enforcement is it's not clear. Could it be a domestic terror group? Yes, it could. Could it be a foreign group? Yes, it could. They just don't know, Wolf. And it may be that the president is being cautious, reluctant to label it a terror event, until he can say with more precision who did it, why they did it, and the progress that they're making in the investigation.
Would it be called a terror event, Fran, if it were, let's say, one individual who was just loony, if you will, crazy, a lone wolf, if you will, going ahead and plotting this kind of joint bombing?
Sure. Wolf, you know, we've talked about homegrown terrorists and the lone wolf syndrome, where it's an individual inspired by a terrorist, an extremist ideology, but not directly affiliated with a group. Look at the Fort Hood shooter. Was that a terrorist event? Yes, it was. That was an individual, Nidal Hassan, who went on a shooting rampage because he was inspired by Anwar al-Awlaki, the Yemeni preacher. And so certainly an individual can be responsible for a terrorist attack, the lone wolf. But again, I think some of this is that the president's being cautious until they understand more what was the driving force behind this event. But once, as Tom Fuentes said earlier, Wolf, once you know that it's an intentional act designed to create casualties and injuries, and it's not a manhole cover or a gas explosion, the FBI is within its rights to designate it a terror attack and then begin to coordinate at the federal level the ongoing investigation.